So in case you couldn't tell, today I am a backwards ladybug. Some people might want to know why I'm dressed as a backwards ladybug, and to that I ask, why not? And then to that they might say, well, there are a lot of reasons I can think of why not, and to that I would respond, okay, I have 2 reasons. One, frankly, the back of the ladybug is just more stylish than the front. And second, why a ladybug? Today we're talking about genetic engineering. That's right, you thought I was playing games over here. My backwards ladybug costume. I don't play games. Now, the reason I want to talk about genetic engineering is because 2 days ago I finished this book called Sapiens, which is essentially just a short retelling of the history of mankind, as told in 466 pages. But essentially, spoiler alert, earmuffs, la la la, the last few chapters of the book touch on the idea of genetic engineering. The story that stood out to me was this one in which an artist and a biochemical engineer got together and created a glow-in-the-dark bunny named Alba, which I can only assume is named Alba after the great Jessica Alba and her glowing skin. But no, the way they created these glow-in-the-dark bunnies was they essentially took jellyfish proteins and inserted them into rabbit embryos. That is like the best magic trick I've ever heard of, including bunnies. Yeah, and I've heard of a lot of bunnies getting pulled out of hats. So, the interesting thing is, while we do this to animals all the time, right, insert them with other animals' DNA, it's pretty much illegal to do this with humans. Insert animal DNA into human DNA. That's a big no-no in the genetic engineering world. But the interesting thing that Sapiens mentioned was, what if one day we're able to do this with humans, right? What if one day we're able to endow ourselves with animal abilities? For example, I don't know if any of you guys have ever dissected a cow eye. No, not just me. Well, essentially, there's this part of the cow eye called the tapetum lucidum, which essentially gives cows their reflective eyes when you see them in the dark. And what that helps them do is to see in the dark. What if we could give that structure of the eyeball to humans so that we're able to better see in the dark? What if that was possible? Or what if one day we were able to give ourselves gills so we could breathe underwater? Would we want to do that? Why or why not? Some of you are like, yes, absolutely, that sounds awesome. That sounds like the 4th book of Harry Potter where he eats that little worm ball and suddenly can go diving for a long time. Trust me, I'm right on board with you. One of the reservations a lot of people usually have with endowing animal traits onto humans is this idea that it's unnatural. Sapiens actually countered this idea of something being unnatural really well. Essentially, the book argued that, well, what is natural, right? Doesn't natural just mean anything that can exist in nature? And if that's the case, that anything that can exist in nature is natural, then anything we humans create is natural. You're like, oh dang, she just blew my mind. Whew, though this bug lady costume is getting a little warm, so we're gonna shed off our wings and go back to the caterpillar. That's not how ladybugs work. Usually, another question that scientists and society ask themselves is, if we try to recreate what a human is, will our pride be our downfall and be the undoing of us? So maybe humans, by trying to give ourselves animal characteristics, we could accidentally end up creating a gene that mutates and hijacks our brains, right? Or makes us infertile, right? That's the idea of pride bringing about our downfall. It's funny because you actually see this idea a lot in Greek mythology, too, where a character has too much hubris. They have too much pride, and essentially the gods punish them for that. So a classic example of this in Greek mythology is the story of King Midas, who essentially asked the gods that everything he touched be turned to gold. And at first he was super excited about this, right? He went around touching every rose in his rose garden, but then when he asked his servants to set out a feast for him, he realized as he went to touch the food and the drinks that everything in his hands was turning to gold, and he realized how much of a curse this actually was. And maybe that will be humans with trying to genetically modify ourselves, right? We try to touch everything, turn it to gold, and we end up just destroying it. But what if, and this is a big what if there were no consequences for genetic engineering? It's interesting because in Sapiens, the author talked about how one day the next level of humans might be unrecognizable from the humans today. Like, they might be so well endowed with animal-like traits, or they might have cyborg-like traits, where we merge computer with human, that make them so intelligent and so better able to perceive the world around them that they will look at us, present humans, as we present humans look at Neanderthals, with pity and a little bit of confusion. Kind of the same way I look at Snuggies. The book also mentioned that we like to think of the future as, us riding rocket ships to the moon, or us fighting aliens, or us riding hoverboards. But what if the future isn't us, but some enhanced version of human, right? With like tiger teeth, cat eyes, owl ears, cyborg brains, right? Like, what if that is the future of human? We already do this to a certain extent. We sculpt our bodies with plastic surgery, or we laser our eyes to make it so we're better able to see. Heck, we even implant hearing devices into our head that send digital signals into our brains, effectively making ourselves cyborgs. Because we can. Because it enhances ourselves. Because we do it in the name of science and bettering human lives and extending human lives and etc., so on and so forth. So where is the line, right? Where is the line between making a better human and making something that is so inhuman we can't even recognize it, right? I'm tempted to say that we should push the line much farther than we have and sort of see where the change takes us. That's at least on the theoretical side, kind of more or less ignoring the negative consequences side. But I like to live in the theoretical a little bit because it's more fascinating to think of what the implications are. I personally would love to live in a world where we see Avatar become our reality. Where magic like that in Harry Potter starts to become real. Where we merge sci-fi into the everyday. That's what I live for. That's what I wake up for. To see how far we can extend the limits of human knowledge and change our world and create it into something that's fascinating. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a girl who dressed up in a ladybug costume. Backwards.